Since we're talking about dating today, might as well refer to this New York Post article, which discusses the concept of getting zombied and how it's worse than ghosting. And of course, it's worse than ghosting because it affects women mostly. I have never had a woman zombie me. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you're a guy and if you ever got zombied by a woman, write it down in the comment section. It never happened to me. So you may ask, well, what is zombieing? Well, it's like ghosting, but after a while, the person comes back acting as if never happened. So, in other words, the woman goes out, does the cushy cushy with the man, right? Like he takes advantage of his male sexual liberation, and then never contacts her. Refuses to respond to her phone calls, refuses to respond to her text messages. But after a couple of days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, he messages her again, acting as if never happens. And this is what zombieing is all about. So first to address the concept of ghosting, which happens to a lot of men. And it happens to women as well, though. This one is not non-gender specific, let's put it like that. It is when you have a connection with someone, you think everything is okay, you may even date them, you may even see them, and one day they refuse to respond to any of your messages. You think that they disappeared from the face of the earth. It's why it's called ghosting. And this, in my opinion, is a very cowardly way of handling relationships. It's a very immature strategy. It doesn't only happen in dating. It happens in a professional environment as well. Like if you're a person that's looking for a job application, you may have like the company that you gave an interview to never contacting you again. Or you can be the employer, and you may never hear from the person that you want to hire again. So it's basically a way where people are being cowards and refuse to assume responsibility because they do not like that particular conversation. So they will just stop responding to emails, they will just stop responding to calls. It is more upsetting, obviously, when it happens to dating because a lot of people do not deal with the professional environment as often. And it's not nice. Yes, not nice. But due to the difference within the gender roles that apparently doesn't exist, men do have the opportunity of zombieing. So what is zombieing? Well, because men initiate, right? Like they're the ones that make the first step and contact the woman. Unless I'm mistaken, and like I need some education from the academia of the Americas that are telling me that this is not the case. And if you set up a Tinder profile, women will message you nonstop. From my personal experience, men are the ones that do the first messaging, right? So when a man messages a woman, he's the one that initiates. And because of that, right, like what ends up happening with these dating apps is that men can message several women. So you cast a wide net, right? Like a man can message 20 to 30 women a day because you use the power of technology. You just have like the same custom message, like applying to jobs. You just have like the cookie cutter and you're like bam, 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 hoping that someone would respond. Eventually, one responds, you hit it up, you go out with her, but then another one responds. And the other one that responds is more interesting. She has more soul. She's got like 2 more reasons to talk with her, right? So now you're talking with the second lady, but you don't want her to know that you're talking with someone else, or you simply lose interest because the second lady is more charismatic. So you decide to date the second lady and you're ghosting the first. However, it doesn't go as planned with the second lady. Maybe you don't hit it off. Maybe she's not good with the cushy cushy. Maybe you do have the cushy cushy, but you end up not liking her after that. Can happen, right? So now you're going back to the first lady. Whose fault is this? Well, of course, it's the dating apps, right? Like this new technology, which has been invented, where human beings are treated like commodity, like you're going into a supermarket and you're picking from the shelves the various type of people that you would want to date, creates this problem. Because normally a man wouldn't have access to so many women, and normally women wouldn't have access to so many men. In the past, like for example, when our parents dated, their circle of friends was quite restricted and they only had access to that very small circle of friends, meaning that their standards were reasonable. So if you wanted to find a significant other, you would usually either have to meet her at a party or you'd have to meet her at school or at university. And sometimes you would even have to ask a friend to hook you up, but like your circle of friends was very small. And on top of that, you actually had to work for those relationships because you knew, well, if this relationship doesn't work, then when am I going to find someone else? In the age of dating apps, however, the situation is not the same because with dating apps, you know for sure that there's many other women waiting for you. So if this doesn't work, you don't even have to try to put in the extra effort. And you're just going to say, well, okay, well, it doesn't work with this lady, I'm going to try with the other. Again, the concept that you can message 20, 30, 40 women expecting some to reply, and when they do, some may even be better than the one you're going out with. And of course, there's no punishment for this, right? Because in the past, when the circle of friends was restricted, you actually knew about people. It was like, well, don't go out with this guy because he's a womanizer. Don't go out with this lady because she's a gold digger. Like, you knew these things. But here, when you have a dating app with millions of people using it, you don't really have a reputation about a person. And even before talking about like having a rating system, I don't think you would want that. But like imagine a rating system and you go to this lady who's trying to date you and she's got like 400 reviews. Even if she has 5 stars, I would be like, do I want to be the 401st review? But that's pretty much the problem, right? Like it's the advancement of technology, which I'm not saying that it's evil or anything like that, but it creates a different dynamic when it comes to dating and relationships. What can you do about it? Not much, just cope and seethe, I guess. It's also like if you look at the preferences that women have on these dating websites, they prefer the top 5% of men, which is very unreasonable because the top 5% of men, well, they're the top 5%. It's like trying to apply for the top 5% of jobs that have the most prestige in your country or the top 5% of universities, right? Like there's a lot of other people that want to apply. So the chances of them zombieing you are incredibly high. Because just like you have preference, they have preference as well. And just like you have a line of men that are willing to date you, they have a line of women. The top 5%. We're not talking about the average guy, right? So if your standards are that high, well, be with the expectation that they're going to treat you just like a commodity. Just like you treat the other men that you look down to. I mean, right? It's normal. Now, if you would lower your standards and have the same standards that your grandmother used to have, then the chance of you being zombied is a lot less. I mean, there are TikTok videos where women say what they prefer in a man, and they're like, well, he needs to be 6 foot tall. He needs to earn $300,000 a year. He needs to have 2 university degrees. He needs to have a PhD. And when you're looking at it, okay, so you want like 0.1% of men in your country. Like that's very interesting. Does your father fit those preferences? Does your grandfather? No? Well, why can't you be a little bit more reasonable like your mom was? Or like your grandma was? If you want what they had. Because like what they had was a marriage and children. Like if you want that, you should be more reasonable. If not, then be unreasonable, but don't be upset when people are zombieing you, when people are ghosting you, because you're going to the top echelon. And when you go to the top echelon, there's other women that go to the top echelon. It's true. And it's the same thing with guys, by the way. Like, if you want to date the 18-year-old supermodel, don't be Pikachu face when you end up being cheated on. It's like, well, you wanted the 18-year-old supermodel. And what do you expect? Other men want the 18-year-old supermodel as well. Do you have what the other men do and more? Well, if you don't, then it is what it is. It's kind of like, see, if you start comparing dating with job applications, and the same way that employers and employees deal with each other and the negotiations and the expectations, it makes a lot of sense. But the thing is, like, most people don't treat it as such. They treat it as something else, and they don't understand why it's happening. But, yeah, I mean, if you're going to apply for a job, and you send, like, 10 applications to 10 different companies, and you start negotiating with one company, but before you sign a contract, there's this other company which is a lot better and is giving you a phone call, of course you're going to go to the other company, right? And if you go to the other company, you're not going to talk to the previous one. for a bit. You're not going to respond to the emails. You're not going to respond to their phone calls. Like, it's expected. And when you finally do get to go to the other company, if it doesn't work out and they're saying, well, we're not going to employ you, you go back to the previous one. Men and women do this shit. It's not like gender specific. But anyway, right, let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.